Brill. So before we start, the main theme of tonight is obviously loss, and loss is a change, and any change is traumatic. You know, we have lots of changes in our lives. We go through the menopause, we move out of home, we have to move house. Every change shows its own kind of traumas and difficulties. So just an outline of that. Change is really hard. There are a few thoughts I had on change, and it's about being patient with yourself, allowing yourself that time, because time is cheesy, but time is a healer, time does help. Change is scary, and we're all going to acknowledge that this is a terrifying thing to have to face, and that it's a process. So we're not expecting to suddenly be better. Now, whenever I work with a client individually, I always show them a diagram. It's like a chart. So on the side, it's how happy you are, and on the bottom axis, it's time. And people think I'm just going to get better and better and better and better. But that's not how recovery works. We actually get better like this. And we have peaks and troughs, and that's okay, that's normal. And if you get into a trough, you're never at rock bottom. You've always made progress, and it's just our job to get out of that trough and carry on. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. Whatever you do, that's what your body and your mind need. It's just important that you be that friend to yourself who says, come on now, it's time to stop this now, it's time to move on to the next stage. Or even just experiment. Experiment with something different, and if it doesn't work, that's fine, you've tried. So you're always doing what you need to do, and that's okay. There's a little graph here. There's lots of different models of grief and how grief works, and I'm sure you've all heard of that one where you go through the stages like denial and anger and acceptance. And that's one of the earlier models, and some people do find that they go through those phases, but more modern thinking is that actually we bounce between two different phases. So the first phase is our loss oriented, and that's where we cry, we feel very sad, we feel very lonely, we long to be with that person again. And the other side is where we start to do new things. We start to maybe have half an hour where we feel okay. We can maybe get absorbed in a book again, and we haven't been able to for a little while, and we ping backwards and forwards between them both. Sometimes you'll be having a bad day, sometimes you'll have a good day, and all of those things are okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Thinking about grief in general, we know that there are two types of grief, but most of us do a bit of a mixture of both. A lot of people are instrumental grievers, and that means that they are the people who get up and arrange the funeral, they get on with things, they're busy, they never stop, and they don't often show their emotions or cry because they're just busy, they get on with things. And the other half of people are people who are intuitive grievers, and they feel their emotions, they show their emotions, and they might be the ones who share how they feel and have a good cry. And some of us are in between. We can sometimes be busy, and sometimes we can cry, and that's okay as well. So some of these techniques might not work for you because you might be one or the other type. So just have a listen and try and pick up on any things that you think actually that does fit me and my style, and that's alright. As I say, there is no right or wrong way of grieving. It's just about doing what your body gets you to do. But before we think about managing grief, we need to make sure that we are okay, we are looking after ourselves. So there's an acronym they use in adult mental health, and it's called the BASICS, and it's an acronym that stands for a balanced diet. So we need to make sure we're fed the right vitamins, the right amount, and that we're looking after ourselves. We need to try and avoid drug and alcohol use, because although it can be good to avoid for a little while through using alcohol or drugs, long term that doesn't help. We need sleep. Everybody needs a good amount of sleep. And if you're struggling to sleep, then speak to your GP, ask them about medication. There's nothing wrong with taking medication, or using mindfulness skills and relaxation skills. Illness and physical health is the I, so making sure you're looking after your body. Go to the doctors. If you feel poorly, get checked out. If you need to take cold and flu tablets, don't punish yourself by not taking them. Just look after your body. You're to create positive experiences, and that's a really challenging thing to do, but trying to just put in really little things that you might look forward to, like I've recorded the new episode of Peaky Blinders, and I'm saving that for when I want to go and watch it and make myself feel better. And some exercise. Everybody benefits from an exercise. Just going for a walk, anything that just gets your heart beating a bit faster and changes what you're doing with your body, so you're not sat there with the feelings. Does that all make sense? Yeah. So that's the groundwork. That's what we need for grief. We need to have all those things in place before we can start processing. Now there's a teardrop And this is what they advise we do to overcome our grief. With the little caveat, it hasn't got an asterisk saying it's okay to not be over something. It's okay that you're going to feel that loss forever. You know, when we lose somebody, it's forever. And it's about us trying to make sure that we do our best to manage that. So when I worked at a hospice, there was a metaphor they used, and it was that when we lose somebody, we have a hole inside of our body and it feels enormous. It feels like the whole of us is empty and it's painful and it's just the worst feeling. It takes your breath away. And over the years, that hole shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. And one day we look back and we feel guilty because that hole's really small now. And we think, well, maybe that means I didn't love them enough. Maybe it means my love is gone. But what we said in the hospice is actually, you've grown around that hole. That hole's just the same size. All the things you've been using to cope, to learn, the friendships you've made, all those positive things that you've put in have made that hole feel smaller. You love that person and miss them just as much. Does that make sense? So, the first task is to accept the reality of the loss. And that sounds so easy, just accept it. But we'll talk about some ways of learning to accept, because it's one of the hardest things we can do. We need to allow ourselves to experience the pain. And that's horrible, but it's one of the things we need to be brave and try and do, so we can talk about that. We need to learn to adjust to our new environment without that person, maybe the hobbies we used to do without that person. And we need to try our best to reinvest in our new reality, so investing in our lives now and seeing what we can do to make that a bit easier. So we'll talk about some techniques that go through those stages. Before we get into it, has anyone got any questions or any thoughts or anything? So, acceptance. Unwillingness to accept is often the biggest problem that we have. I'm sure there's loads of examples, like if you had chronic pain, if you had constant back pain and you didn't want to accept that, then you would be going at 90 miles an hour, you wouldn't be looking after yourself, you wouldn't be going to physio, you wouldn't be taking the right tablets, you would be doing things that weren't that helpful, but actually that makes the pain worse. So accepting the pain is to say, actually, I'm going to go and do some yoga. I'm going to go and do physio. And that makes the pain worse. It's horrible when you're in pain and you do exercise. Actually, long term, that helps. And allowing ourselves to have rests whenever we needed to if we were in pain would really help us in the end. So it's looking at what we're doing short term to cope, but might have long term unhelpful consequences. Then breathe. Nice deep breaths, nice slow breaths, and we'll talk a lot more about resting our body and doing some physical relaxation in a bit. It helps to take stock, so what's right here, right now. Because when we're depressed, we're thinking about the past, and when we're anxious, we're thinking about the future. Right here, right now, I'm okay. I'm warm enough, I've got a drink, I'm in good company, I'm all right now, and that's all I can control as well. So taking stock of the moment of where am I, what am I feeling, what have I been thinking about for the last 20 minutes, and how do I just kind of ground myself right here, what can I actually feel right now. Some people find it helpful to have coping statements that they might want to say to themselves or write down, so things like, this is just the way life is right now, this is my acceptance. I can choose to make space for this horrible feeling even if I don't want it here. Living with this now will help me in the future. I can't change what's already happened, and the present is the only moment I have control over. There are a few that I could think about, but I think people have their own, you can use your own language. Some people will say things like, this is really shit, and that's okay. It's whatever you want your coping statements to be. And yes, ask yourself questions about this situation. So what do I have control over right now? In reality, what have I got control over? How did I just respond to that feeling or that thought? And how could I respond in a way that might be a bit more helpful for me right now? And then how do I decide what I'm going to do next? I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something different. So what am I going to choose to do? And we'll talk about values, because it's always helpful if it's something that we value doing, rather than just something you've read on the internet that doesn't mean anything to you. In the bereavement literature, and there's a really lovely book that I've referenced at the very end, there was this checklist for coping, and it talks about all the things that you can do each day to help yourself cope with your bereavement. So the first one was seek comfort and help from others. So just reaching out, just being around other people, friends and family, maybe making new friends, telling people why they're so special to you, which is something that we don't often do. Do you want another one?
No, it's fine.
Yeah, we don't often tell people how special they are to us, do we? And then when they're gone, we wish we had. And it's really lovely to be told why you're so special. So if you can be brave enough to talk to someone that's really special to you and tell them what it is about them, what do they do, what do you treasure about them, sharing that experience. Connecting with your pets. I've got a little dog who makes me feel a bit better when I'm feeling stressed out. Connecting with nature. Have you heard about forest bathing? It's this thing apparently it's a thing I think it's in Japan, and they walk out into a forest and they just lay there on the floor and they listen and they feel the feeling of the wind blowing on their skin or the sun touching their skin, and take that moment to just be in nature. We are part of nature, and experience that sense of being connected to something bigger than us can be really, really useful. And bereavement groups, there are quite a lot of bereavement groups, and again I put a link in the back to the Dorset County Council. We've got a list of all of them, and there's really specific ones for every type of loss, anything you can think of there is a group for. And we know that social contact is one of the most useful things that we can do when we are experiencing any problem. It's a bit repetitive, but taking care of yourself physically and emotionally, so your brain needs time to heal. It's had a trauma, you need to give your brain that time and space. It's going to make mistakes, because when we're feeling overwhelmed we can't concentrate and our memory is shot and, you know, it's rubbish. Our brain's not very good at coping with all that stuff. Stay connected to the person you lost. So it's important that we all have a way that we can connect to that person. It might be a place where they are now, it might be their grave, it might be a place where you scattered ashes, it might be somewhere that you just really shared and loved with them, like a particular place in the New Forest or somewhere on the beach. You might want to create memorials, plant a tree, have a bench, whatever it is that for you helps you to sit and be with that person whenever you want to be. Writing letters is really helpful, looking through photos, and obviously being really kind to yourself, because sadness can come from nowhere. I know we've probably all had it where you put the radio on and a certain song comes on, or smells hit us really strongly. A certain smell always get you emotionally, so being kind to ourselves when that happens. Creating safety for yourself and empowerment. So it says you are a survivor, say no to unreasonable demands, look after yourself, you know what your limits are, make a plan for coping at bad times, anniversaries, holidays, Christmas. They're all really hard times for us, so make sure that we've got a good plan for self-care when we have those challenging anniversaries. And moving towards the future thinking, so re-establishing what used to give us meaning. What did we used to really value and love? And again, we'll come on to values in a minute. My next one was tell stories, because it's something that really struck a chord with me when I had my loss, and when I was very, very close to my grandmother. She almost brought me up in some ways, and when she died I was woken up by this phone call, and I turned to my husband and told him, and the first thing he said was, tell me your favourite story about her. And I thought that was the loveliest thing that someone could say, rather than don't cry, don't do that, don't be sad, which makes you want to hold it in. It's tell me. Telling stories is so helpful. And when you're telling your story, there's some questions here you can ask yourself, like, what were their special qualities? What was your role in the relationship? Sorry. Roughly on a bit where it's called checklist for coping, and we were just talking about what might be on our checklist just to make sure that we're okay and we're coping. And we were talking about telling stories. So it's one of our first bereavement techniques is telling stories. So when we're telling our story about the person that we loved, then we think about, first of all, what was their special qualities? What was it that you felt was so special about them? Which is why you treasured them so much? What was your role in that relationship? What did you do? What version of yourself were you with them? Because we're a different person with every person we're with, so which version of you were you? How did you feel when you were with them? How do you feel about them now? And then what would help you with your grief now? So an example I put in is one of my clients that I worked with, and one of her very, very close friends passed away. So they used to love going to galleries together, they used to love art. So her questions were, they were creative and they were talented and they were curious, they wanted to know more about art. And so she introduced them to music and art, and they really shared that together. They used to go to museums together and galleries together, got to London on day trips on the coach. And when she was with that person, she was interesting and she was fun, and she knew a bit more about a certain artist than the friend did. So she would be an educator and lead this person to seeing new things. And also in turn, when she was with them, she felt, I'm more curious, I enjoy learning, I want to learn more about an artist I don't know about. So then now, her feelings are, well, it was a real waste of a good life. It's really sad. And what this lady would do to manage her grief was, she got some really lovely art books about the artists that her friend particularly loved, and gave them to the friend's daughter, and invited her, would you like to come to one of the galleries that we really love together? And also then she enrolled in an art class, and she couldn't paint, but she thought, I'll learn how to maybe just do a couple of techniques, because it was doing that made her feel just more connected to her friends, and to have a sense of this person's life has had ripples. It's impacted on other people and it's benefited other people. It wasn't just her love of art, now we can help her daughter love art too. And sometimes people find helping other people remember and treasure that loved one can really help them to feel they have a purpose. Other more practical ways of coping with grief. Have you heard about a grief drawer? It's this idea that you find a drawer in your house that's empty, or clear a drawer out, and you put everything in that drawer about the person you love. Photos, CDs, their favourite t-shirt, whatever you want to put in that drawer, and you close the drawer. And then, once a day, you set a timer for 10 minutes to open the drawer and look through that stuff. And you cry, and you let the feelings out, and you really, really experience that pain. And then when the timer goes off, you shut the drawer, and you're done. So you're not avoiding it, because avoiding's bad. We're allowing the feelings in, but it feels a bit more controlled. And if you can't fit a thing in the drawer, put it next to the drawer, put a cover over it, making sure that you are the one who's in control of opening that drawer or box or whatever it is you want to put your favourite things about them in. You can write a letter, so you can write a letter to the person like we're going to do today, or you can write a letter to yourself. Some people find it quite helpful to write a letter to maybe the child in them, if that's something that you connect with, or themselves 5 years ago, and tell them what you'd like them to know. Tell them how you're going to cope, what your advice would be, what they might experience, what they have to look forwards to, and then read that yourself in a few days' time to see what advice you give yourself, really, because we know ourselves best and we know how we need to cope, but sometimes we're not very good at listening to ourselves. And yeah, joining groups, and groups are very helpful. So, is that okay? Yeah, all making sense? Don't want to rattle through, because I know when I get enthusiastic I start to talk really, really quickly. Values. Values are really, really important. Values are our little compass that guides us to making choices about what we do with our lives. And values are one of the newest things that we're working a lot on in psychotherapy at the moment. So you could be given a list of, these are all the things you should do to cope, and it could be go for a walk, go and look at the sea, go and do this, go and do that. But if it's all stuff you don't care about, it doesn't matter. You're just being given another list of jobs that you don't need. So instead it's important to work out what is it you used to value when things were all right, and how do we live that value now, but obviously we might have to change it. So an example is, I worked with a man who he used to absolutely love golf, but then he developed Parkinson's and he couldn't walk around the golf course anymore, he couldn't play golf. And that was a big bereavement for him of his own physical ability. So we looked at his love of golf, and we wondered, what was it about golf that he loved? And it was about being with his mates and being out and about in nature in the fresh air. And so we had to think about, well, what can you do now that meets those values, but it's something different? And he chose bird watching in the end, because he could be out and about, could whisper to his mates in the bird watching hut, whatever it's called, but also you're in nature. So it's about looking at your values, which can be really hard, and finding new ways of doing that. Sometimes I bring in values cards, which can be really helpful. You can search these values cards and pick ones that suit you, like connection to others, nature, creativity, religion, family, love, whatever it is that your values are. And then think about setting yourself some goals that are in line with that value. Does anybody have like a value in the top of their head that they've gone, yeah, I do have a value? It's a really hard question.
Adventure.
Yeah, family, adventure. Yeah. And so obviously family might have changed, your ability to adventure might have changed. So can you think about ways that you can adapt and do something that is adventurous or family oriented, but in a new way that feels maybe a bit safer for now? And seeing if that can be something that could be done. You know, I worked with somebody who they really loved, what was their thing? It was about taking risks, being a bit of a daredevil. And he used to love going shark cage diving and really, really risky stuff. And couldn't do that anymore. So we were thinking about, how do you get that thrill? You know, what about just going on a roller coaster down the road in Southsea? What about doing something that maybe thrills you, like going to the top of the Spinnaker Tower? I was living in Portsmouth at the time, and seeing what else you could do that might meet that need. And yeah, it's not great, it's not swimming with sharks, but it's not staying in bed all day long, and so that's got to be better for you. So have a think about what you used to love doing and why you loved doing that. What absorbs you or absorbed you, and what's it about you that took you to that absorbed place? So yeah, it's got here examples. So if your value is creativity, can you go on YouTube and learn knitting? It might be really hard, but 10 minutes swearing about knitting and making knots is 10 minutes you're not crying for, and that's got to be a nice break. And then try and use those things to break out of your grief cycle. When you get stuck in that loop, using those things to just try and break the cycle and give yourself a break. And then if you've got any things they've discovered since their bereavement that really helped them to just get out and about a bit more. New activities and new hobbies. Sports, yeah, really absorbing. Yeah.
I went out and bought a ukulele.
Did you?
Yeah.
Fab.
Oh yeah. I got very far now.
Yeah, that's good.
Trying.
Something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you for those. What else am I thinking about? Being compassionate. So being compassionate, I've done a whole half an hour talk on this before, a video on the group, because being compassionate is really, really hard. We are always criticising ourselves and feeling guilty for every single thing we do. I'm sure it's a cultural thing that we are taught to be mean to ourselves. I don't know if you've all noticed you've got just a critical voice of you're not doing that right, or you shouldn't be feeling like that, and just harassing us. It's really important that we are compassionate to ourselves right now. Say the things to ourselves that we would say to a good friend. Because a good friend would say, you can feel that feeling, you can have a cry, go for it. But a good friend would also say after 20 minutes or half an hour of crying, okay, now you need to get up and do something else. They would be guiding you. And they wouldn't say it in a judgmental way. They wouldn't go, oh my God, look at you doing this again. They go, I get it, it's rubbish. Come on, how can we do this? And they coach and they guide. So trying our best to really foster that compassionate voice in ourselves, even when we don't feel compassionate. So again, using our kind phrases, I'm doing my best. I absolutely am. And that's why I feel guilty, because I want to do my best. If I didn't want to do my best, I wouldn't care, I wouldn't feel guilty at all. Trying to do those things that are nice to ourselves. Sometimes it helps to practice this on other people. So we can do a loving kindness meditation where I get people to sit and close their eyes. We can practice if you want. Would you like to do a meditation? Okay. If you feel comfortable too, close your eyes. And if you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, just gently look at the ground so that other people don't feel uncomfortable. And first of all, just start by taking a nice deep breath in and out. Just noticing your bum sat on the seat. If you can feel your feet touch the floor. Notice the sensation of a bit of a breeze on your skin. And I want you to bring to mind somebody that you know who's living, that you care about. Not someone that you feel weird feelings towards. Maybe it could even be a pet. And I want you to picture them in your mind, and I want you to say to them in your head, may you be happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering. And then bring to mind someone that you really love, someone that's really safe, makes you feel very happy, and think, may you be happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering. And then you can picture someone really neutral, maybe the postman, someone you saw at the bank. Try and picture them, and again say to them, may you be happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering. And then if you can, we're going to do it for ourselves. So picture yourself and say to yourself, may you be happy, may you know peace, may you be free from suffering. And really hold that in mind, that sensation of really caring for yourself, really wishing the best for yourself like you would for anybody else. And whenever you're ready, you're welcome to gently open your eyes and come back into the room. Have people done any mindfulness or meditation before? It can be a really helpful technique. It can be very hard when you are in the early stages of bereavement if you've got the ones where are really silent, where you just listen to musical bells, because your brain just wanders. So it can be more helpful to do ones that are a bit more structured, like where you notice your body, or where you think about you going on a walk in a lovely field or something, and that keeps your brain a bit more here and now. And then we think about our body and soothing our body. So we feel grief in our body. We feel every emotion in our body, but grief has a real impact on us, and we often feel those physical sensations, and it feels like we're unwell sometimes. And there's been a few studies that found that when you have been bereaved, your immunity actually gets a lot lower. You're much more susceptible to being poorly. So we really need to look after our bodies and soothe our bodies in any way that we can, as well as our brains. So obviously we've got our breathing techniques first. I don't know if you notice that when you're stressed, when you're panicking, when you're crying, we go and we do like a big in-breath, and we just do a little out-breath, and we do a big in-breath, and that actually gets us more het up, makes us feel worse and worse and worse, and we're panicking. So what we have to do, we just have to breathe the opposite way. So breathe in a normal amount, not a big breath, just a normal amount, and then breathe out a really long breath, as long as you can. And then breathe in just enough to fill up your lungs again, and breathe out a really long time. Almost like you're a bit lazy, you can't be bothered to breathe. I'm just going to do the bare minimum. And that actually settles our body. We can't fight it, we have to relax when we do that. There's another technique as well, which don't do if you've got a heart problem, but you ever hear about these really tragic stories where like a little kid falls into a frozen pond and they've been under for ages, but they haven't drowned because their body slows down? That's called the mammalian dive reflex. We can't help but slow ourselves down when we do it. So what we can do is we can mimic this just at home. If you're feeling just so overwhelmed you can't focus, fill up a big bowl with cold water, cold out the tap, not a freezer, like not ice cubes, don't burn yourself. And then you put our face down into it, and we get these nerves around the eyes wet, and we hold our breath for 30 seconds, and we tip our head down, and our body thinks that we're diving, and it naturally slows down. We can't fight it. In 30 seconds we will calm down. And I didn't believe this, and then I went on a training course and I had to do it, and my heart, they put a heart rate thing on, my heart rate was 120 beats a minute, because I was going, my makeup's going to wash off, I'm going to have no eyebrows, I'm going to look ridiculous. And I did it, and in 30 seconds my heart rate went from 120 to 60 beats a minute. You just can't fight it, you will calm down. And sometimes that can just give you the headspace to go, right, I was in a bit of a panic, what do I need to do to just calm down? It can then, all the soothing stuff can then work. Because you know, when you're really panicking, I can give you any of this stuff and it's not going to work. You need to calm down first sometimes. Mindfulness, as I say, mindfulness is really useful, really helpful. I can recommend loads of mindfulness resources that are free. A lot of people have got Headspace. I'm a bit tight, I don't want to pay for it. So I use Mindful Health, which is just free. It's these two guys in Brighton who've got lovely calming voices. I found that really good. And there's an app you can download as well called Insight Timer, and that's free. And you go on Insight Timer and it goes, how long have you got? And I'm like, oh, I've got 10 minutes. And then it goes, what's the problem? And you can go, I can't sleep, or I'm panicking, or whatever. And it will give you every single free meditation out there for that problem. The only issue is I find is I can't focus when it's like an American accent or an Australian accent, because I'm like, oh, you say that word funny, mirror, mirror, and I get a bit lost. So I find it easier when there's like an English or a Scottish accent. So have a play with that and see which one that you like best. Yoga, everybody loves yoga. It's very good for you, very good for your body, and it's good because when you're doing yoga, you're in tune with your body. You're just breathing, you're just noticing how your body feels. You're not thinking because you're too busy going, oh my god, I'm in a lot of pain, I need to stop this. So exercise is good for you in general. And anything else that you like that soothes your body. So I like a bath. If I've got the money, I'll go on Groupon and I'll buy a massage on Groupon. Whatever it is that you can do to soothe your body. And then I've got my don'ts for grief. So that's kind of the techniques I've got for you. And we'll talk about them in a minute if you have any questions. But my don'ts for grief are, as I keep saying, avoidance. Don't avoid. I know it's the easiest thing to do in the short term because facing it is too painful, but it's going to maintain this pain. So I've got this seesaw on there, and it's, yeah, short-term gain if you avoid, short-term gain if you abuse drugs or alcohol because you forget for a couple of days. But long-term, this pain never goes away. So we have to face it to make it better, which I know is horrible. Sometimes people keep busy. Keeping busy is good. It's good to have things that keep your mind occupied, but don't keep too busy. I know a lot of people and they'll get up at 6 AM and they won't stop doing housework, and they go to work and then more housework and then cooking and cleaning, and then they collapse in bed at midnight and they've spent the whole day busy, but they've not had any time to process their loss. We actually do need to give ourselves time with nothing in it to feel rubbish, because that's how we process. It's the same for any problem. If you kept busy all day long, you just don't have time to be you and to know what's happened. And don't make any big life changes. If you can, obviously sometimes there's parameters like money that get in the way, but if you can, don't make any big life changes while you're going through your grief, because sometimes we can end up making choices that we then regret when we're better. Obviously there's different types of grief, and I've got when does grief become a problem, because there's lots of types of grief that can be a bit more challenging and you might need some professional support with. So ambiguous grief, so that's when you lose somebody and say they never find the body. That's really hard because then we don't know if they're alive or gone, and that's really challenging and that can cause a lot of problems. Complex grief, so that's when our grief has gone on for such a long time that it's actually getting in the way of our lives. So people put these time limits on grief and they're like, you should be fine within 6 months, but that's just rubbish, you know. It doesn't matter how long you grieve for, it's about making sure it doesn't get in the way of your life. You can still function, you can still go to work, you can still see friends. And if you feel detached from reality, or you have a loss of sense of your identity, that's a real challenge as well. So make sure you get professional help if you have these kind of feelings of not being real. And traumatic grief is a really horrible, difficult thing. A lot of people might find that if there was a traumatic death, that they have a lot of flashbacks or nightmares to that moment, maybe when they found their loved one. And if you have flashbacks and nightmares about a loss, then that's trauma, that's a whole PTSD. It's really important that you look after yourself. Some people do need professional help for that. There was a quote I found about in our traumatic grief website, and it said, "The final punctuation mark at the end of the story isn't the book itself. There were chapters full of events and adventures and maybe even illustrations, but sometimes when we've had a traumatic loss, we only remember that full stop, we only remember the horrible ending, and we really struggle to remember the life and the happiness and the love in between." For people who find that, I haven't written it here, I just thought about it, if people who find that very difficult, sometimes it can help to do a timeline. So to start from the beginning of your relationship with that person, timeline right up to the end, and you can put in things like flowers or shells in your timeline, or drawings, or a different colour pen for the lovely events, and you know, a different colour pen or a rock for the bad events. And it helps people to start to remember that there were lovely periods, there were nice things, and that's why it hurts so much, really. If we didn't care about somebody, it wouldn't hurt so much, so it can help us to really think about that and manage that bereavement. And if you feel so severely depressed or anxious, or that you feel that you can't cope, maybe you might be having some suicidal thoughts or self-harm, do go and speak to your GP. That's something that we can help you with. And it's really important that you care for yourself, and it's normal. 70% of us in our lifetime will consider suicide. So that's okay, it's normal, and you're not going to be carted off to a mental hospital, I promise. a lot of people have suicidal thoughts, so do look after yourself and get help. And then, yeah, I've got my resources on the back. So, different websites. Some people have actually made suggestions in the group, which is really helpful. I put those on there. Books that I really like that I've read. Cruise Bereavement, they're based over in Southbourne. I checked there yesterday when I was writing the last bit, and their waiting list is closed right now because they're quite full up. But
It's just reopened.
has it? Thank you. I must have been today.
Yeah, I got an appointment in 6 weeks.
Oh, well done. Oh, thank you so much. That's brilliant. So yeah, they're open again. So contact Cruise because they're wonderful. I've worked with some people who've seen Cruise before they've come to see me about a different problem, and they just have so much praise for Cruise. Has anyone got any questions or any reflections or